Happy Friday. Welcome to the Little Nessie Happy Hour podcast. Happy Friday to you, Ron, sir.
Happy Friday to you, David. We've had to make some adjustments. It's Friday, which fits better with happy hour, but it's 9 in the morning here, it's a give and take.
Well, let's start off with a cheers. So happy hour to you, sir. Cheers to you. Clink.
Happy brunch.
I need to build in a sound effect that has a clink sound on it when we cheers. So
I like that.
Expect that next week. All right. Well, happy Friday. And for anyone that's joining now or later, we are going to chat. Ron and I are going to chat for the next hour or so. I think last time we went live, we almost nailed it right on the head with going for an hour. Usually we're about an hour 5, hour 8 or so, but we're going to chat for the next hour, and we're talking all things housing, mortgage, real estate, AI, and a few random ass topics as well. So I'm excited about it. Ron, what topic are you most excited about this week?
You know what, David? We have a bunch of really good topics, so I'm really looking forward to our slate of topics this week because they're not so. Sometimes they get weeds and into heavy stuff, and this is going to be more societal, trends stuff. Will be great.
There you go.
How about you?
I have a from the. You know what? I think the from the gut. I've got an interesting one that all about social media this week that I've had these thoughts for years now. And I think when I talk about the subject, I might get some haters on this topic. So we'll see. But I like controversy. Anytime I chat with McKenna about politics or just stuff like that, she always just shuts down. I'm like, she and I don't necessarily agree with each other on a lot of things politically, but I enjoy having the conversations with people, and she does not. So I'm looking forward to the controversy that it might stir up. So we'll see.
I can't wait to hear it.
All right, well, let's get to it. Let's start with the topics. We're going to go through topic overviews and just tell you what we're going to talk about, and then we'll get to them. So the first one is our from the gut. I'm going to talk about social media and how different people, especially different people of different generations, use social media, interact with social media, and that's going to be from my gut. And then we've got 3 main topics that we're going to give you a little snippet or overview of. First one is Ron.
Yeah, this is a controversial topic. DTC is the future, but we're going to look at Levi Strauss's step into direct to consumer and what we can glean from that if you're in mortgage or real estate. I love that topic too, by the way. This is a great photo of producer McKenna. These are just some startling statistics about the first lender usually wins, so we'll talk about that. Well, here we're going to have some, I think, David, would you agree, some shocking data that will be really fun to discuss? So some silent changes and trends.
I do think it's a little bit shocking. I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
And then we've got, I think, 3 rapid fire topics, which usually we try to hit 3 to 4 minutes on. So we'll see how that goes. But without any further ado, let's get to From the Gut. All right. So, like I said, this week talking about social media, audiences, authenticity, effort, authenticity. And it's this idea that keeps getting repeated in our industry. You need to be authentic. You need to be on video. Social media is all about connection and community. And listen, none of that is wrong. But I do think in some ways it's incomplete because it assumes everyone uses social media the same way, and they don't, not even close. I've been in marketing for over 15 years now. I've led social media teams, large teams. I've seen what works. I've seen what doesn't work. And I've seen how people of all different ages interact with social media and how they use it. And one thing that's always bothered me a little bit is when people who are really good at social media start giving advice as if it applies to everyone. Because most of the people giving that advice, they're naturally good on camera. Gosh, sorry. They're naturally good on camera. They're comfortable, they're expressive, maybe they're creative, they're willing to follow trends or even start some trends and trends of their own and be silly sometimes. So, of course, their answer is just get on video, just be authentic, be your true self. And again, that is not wrong, but they're also coming from a perspective from their strengths, what they're good at, not necessarily yours. Because here's the reality. In the mortgage industry, a huge percentage of loan officers are older. I would put myself in close to that category. A lot of them are in their 50s and 60s and beyond that. And that generation, for the most part, they didn't grow up creating content. They didn't grow up talking to a camera. They didn't grow up chasing trends. And a lot of them don't want to. And honestly, that's okay because here's the part that nobody really talks about. Different generations don't just use social media differently, they use it for completely different reasons. And this isn't opinion. I looked up some data and there is some solid research and data behind it. When you look at Gen Z, they're using social media almost like a search engine. Not almost, they are. They're using it as a search engine. They're discovering information there. They're getting their news there. They're trusting creators and influencers over traditional sources. It's how they view the world. But when you look at Gen X, I was actually a little bit surprised at this, but when I thought about it, it made sense. A big part of how Gen X use social media is actually tied to buying behavior. They're researching products, they're making decisions, they're engaging with brands if they trust them. And then you look at boomers. A lot of them are using platforms like Facebook to stay connected with family or just keep up with what's going on, not to build a personal brand, not to become a creator, just to stay informed and occasionally maybe entertained. So when someone says social media is all about connection and community, that might be true for them, but it's not universally true. My son, he's 26 years old. He's not on social media much. And when he is, he's just watching. He's never or very rarely posting. I'd say probably never. Because for a lot of people, social media is simply just two things: entertainment and education. That's it. That's how I use it personally. I'm not on there looking for friends. I've got friends. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to build a community. I've got a great community offline. I'm either typically when I'm on social, I'm either trying to learn something or I'm just trying to unwind for a few minutes. And when you look at it that way, it actually changes how you should approach it. Because if your audience isn't trying to be entertained by trends and they're not looking to build relationship with you online, then maybe the goal isn't to become some high energy video personality. Maybe the goal is to be simply useful, to say something clearly, to share something helpful, or to provide a perspective in a way that fits you. Now, like I said, to the hate that I'm going to get from people like the likes of Alec Hansen or Brian Covey, two good friends of mine, and more people, they're crushing it and they have the right strategy, but it fits them and also for a lot of other people. But again, their strategies are not universally true because not everyone is going to be great on camera. I've trained people for over a decade. I've trained people on how to feel comfortable on camera, how to deliver on camera, and I've done it with people for weeks, months, and in a few cases even years. And sometimes it's just not who they are. Does that mean they should never post on social media? Of course not. Not everyone is going to be dynamic and bubbly. And trying to force that usually comes across worse than just being straightforward. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. They think the only way to win on social media, they think that's the only way to win on social media is to play the same games as the people who are naturally good at it. And that's just not true because there's different ways to show up, different ways to communicate. There's different ways to provide value. You don't have to chase trends. You don't have to become someone you're not. You just have to understand and who you're trying to reach and maybe why they're there in the first place. Because social media isn't just one thing, it's a bunch of different environments with a bunch of different expectations and a bunch of different audiences. And once you see that, you stop trying to fit into someone else's formula and you start building your own. Ron, any thoughts?
Well, my first thought is, David, I was surprised when you were saying I'm probably gonna get haters. I'm like, how can you get possibly get haters? That was until you called out Alec and you know and Brian, who are really good guys. I know you're friends with.
Yes,
Uh,
friends with both of them.
but that's another outstanding from the gut. I'll tell you, when I was first listening to you, I was thinking back. I was at the Modern Mortgage Summit yesterday in Washington D.C. and Craig Sewing was one of the presenters, and the kind of the theme of his topic was, everybody says do more content, do more content, do more content, and his theme was be the content, like transcend from doing content to becoming the content, which I thought was a really interesting theme and kind of struck me as you were talking about social media.
Yeah. I was talking to McKenna. McKenna, come on camera real quick. I was talking to McKenna about my thoughts on this yesterday, or I think it was yesterday, and we talked about the people who are just not good on camera, yet they force themselves to be because they're being told, you got to be on camera, got to be on camera, got to be on camera, be your natural self, be authentic. And just some people aren't there. Some people can get there the more they do it, but some people, like I said, I've trained people over years and they don't present well on camera. And so should they try? McKenna, what were your thoughts on that?
I think it's I think it's a double-edged sword because it's not necessarily that just because you're not good on camera doesn't mean that you shouldn't, because it is a skill. It's something that you can build up and practice and
Hmm.
do. And so I think even if you're not, if it's something that you're going into with the mindset of I want to get better and it's something that I want to improve on, I think you absolutely should. But if it's not necessarily something that you care about, then I would say that maybe there's another avenue that they could find that could help them out a little bit, that might help them progress in social media a little bit more, because it's not necessarily a fault of anybody who's not good on camera. That's all right. There's nothing wrong with that, but also it is something that if that's something that you want to do, it's a skill that you have to practice and get better at.
Yeah. And just like anything else, it takes what is it to become an expert? 10,000 hours, something like that. Did I get that right?
I
So
don't
it
know.
takes work.
Mhm.
Yeah, I forget the exact phrasing of it, but to become pro level at anything, it takes 10,000 hours. Did I get
Yeah.
that right? Wrong, Ron?
Yeah, you are getting that relatively right. Whether it's 10,000 hours or 10,000 attempts, 10,000
Yeah.
is the number. David, though, when you talk about good at video, you have to go back to the definition. Good starts with being you. Like, you can suck, but if you're authentically you, you're probably adorable to somebody, right? And it's when you're false, like when you try to be somebody else. If I tried to be Alec Hansen, that I would exceptionally suck. But if I could just be my own clumsy self, I suck less.
I don't think I agree with that.
Oh,
Just, mm, I might offend too many people if I go down that rabbit hole. I don't know. If you're just not that interesting, it's how you deliver. Some people are just naturally great storytellers, right? The way they frame their story, the way they talk, their inflection, and so on. Some people are naturally good at that. But if you just talk like this and you're not a very engaging or uplifting or energetic person, that I would say you're not right for video, you know?
And David, we might be talking about different things in that if you probably looked at the top, 20 watched videos of all time, half of them are dorks doing stupid things, you know, right? It's not about being polished is my point.
Okay, valid. We'll agree to disagree. No, I
Okay.
no, I agree. I agree with that. It's not always about polish, and I think the way social media has evolved over the last few days. Even if you listen to Gary Vee, he's talking about, how huge brands are just now doing commercials, just simply using their phone and not polished and in low level production. So yeah, we agree.
Yeah,
But
and the
let's
thing
move on.
I would argue,
Oh,
David, before I would argue if you're authentic and if you respect your audience,
mhm,
those are the two key things. And like disrespecting the audience is when you go to give a keynote and you're like, I didn't prepare, I really don't know what I'm going to talk about, so just ask me questions. You completely
right,
disrespected your audience, right? And so
right.
those two things, where if you actually try and you be yourself, then you're starting in a much better place.
Well, if you're watching this, you should know that Ron and I prepare for this podcast. We don't just come in willy nilly. Ron puts hours of work every week into what we're going to talk about. Mine is from the gut. My from the guts are usually a surprise to him. He never knows what I'm going to talk about until usually the day off. So, but everything else, he puts hours of work into what we're going to talk about, pulls charts, grabs content from all different sources. So let's get into the first one. Our first topic, we are talking about DTC.
Yeah, so direct to consumer is
Oh,
a dirty
hold on,
word.
Ron. Hold on, Ron. We've got a note from the producer. The number one most viewed video on YouTube is the Baby Shark Dance by Pink Fong. Kids songs and stories with over 16 billion views. Wow. All right. Good nugget of information there,
Thank you,
McKenna. Thank
producer
you.
McKenna. Well, you think of that dude that did that horrible song. What's that song that is so popular back in the day?
How long we
You know what
talking
I'm
about?
talking I don't even know it. It was
What
the
the fox
stupidest thing
say?
in the whole world.
What the fox say?
What?
What the fox say?
No, no,
Oh, it
no,
was the one
no.
before that. It was a Gangnam Style?
Yeah,
Whoop 'em
yeah,
Gangnam
like,
Style.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that guy's well polished. He's a goofball. I mean, what the hell?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's get to direct to consumer. So it's so interesting, and we're going to talk about Levi Strauss as our to frame this. But in mortgage and real estate, salespeople naturally bristle at direct to consumer because they feel like that's a vehicle to replace them, or it's a vehicle to reduce their wages or to minimize their worth. And so we really hate the idea of direct to consumer. And so it's very interesting because Levi Strauss, if we go to this next chart, Levi Strauss for the first time is now selling more clothes directly to the consumer than they do through wholesale. And wholesale means through retail outlets like to Macy's or any of the places they sell their clothes to, right? Even in their own stores, they sell now more online, and they had to completely break their entire model. Now, understand their model was starting to fail because people don't go into retail stores as much. Their model was starting to fail. They had to completely break the model, risk offending their wholesale partners in order to get some sort of financial viability. And through this, they now have a really strong relationship with their clients, and they control the relationship or the narrative with their clients. They control the standards, the brand message, the experience, the journey. And I thought that's very interesting because there's so much work going on right now with mortgage companies and real estate companies trying to get directly to the consumer. And the basis isn't to eradicate or to get rid of salespeople, it's to meet the consumer where they want to be met. That's what's so critical, important. And David, here's the thing that I think all of us have to understand is the product is changing. It used to be back in the day, the product was access to information. It was, if you were buying real estate, it was access to listings, and only real estate agents could give you the access. It was access, so if you're mortgaged, the information about loans, about rates, the access is what you sold. That was the product. It was, selling access to information as well as completing the procedural things like completing an application. Today, customers can do that on their own. A customer can go 100 places online and complete an application and get an approval in about 5 seconds. We no longer are the gatekeepers to that experience. And so in one way, the consumer has already opted to go, directly to technology or directly to these companies. They've opted as whether we want to meet them there. And then if we understand that our product is now different, it isn't access to information, it isn't access to an application or processing an application. It's totally different today. Today, it's about advice. It's about curating an elevated experience. It's about handling their emotions and generating confidence. It's empathy. It's being superhuman. And if we're trying to cling to that, the value is our commodity of controlling the information or controlling the process, you're going to be left behind. But if you understand that you now sell a different product and you step into being great about that product, you can really succeed. And David, before I turn it over to you, I would say, the best way to put it is we need to become less the gatekeeper and more the guide, less controlling access to information and more interpretation of complexity, less transaction handler and more experience owner. And David, I would say I published a article on LinkedIn on this last week. I'm very happy with my article. I don't know if we can put a link to it, but I invite people to go read it. Hopefully, it'll be a little bit not challenging, but hopefully, open your ideas about what direct to consumer is.
There's always been a tension between retail and direct to consumer. And typically, retail, not a huge fan when companies adopt direct to consumer. But to what you're saying, it's something that they just have to be okay with. And do you think there are steps that retail loan officers need to be taking today in order to get themselves ready for this transition? Because it's already underway.
Yeah, the transitions is already happening. You have to understand who your client is, and you got to figure out where to meet and where they want to be met. And you can't put rules around that. And so you have to learn. You have to become a direct consumer in ways that giant companies and mass technology can't. Technology can't go do a homebuyer seminar. Technology can't, go pound the street or get belly to belly. That's what you need to do, and you need to be super, human about it. And you need to use all the technology tools surrounding direct to consumer. And then what you have to do, Dave, this is like I keep saying, this is so critically important. You have to understand what your product is today, and that product isn't the thing that the machine does. Your product is the thing you do above the machine, the human thing, and that's what you have to get really, really good at and really clear about.
It makes me think about the little monologue, the from the gut that I gave, and how people use and what they want from social media. Um, a lot of people are like, yeah, social media is about building community, it's about relationships. I don't look at it that way. I'm not interested in building relationships on social media. I think it's similar with with the transition from retail becoming a hybrid of direct to consumer now, and the value that I think retail loan officers, or one of the values was, the relationship sales, relationship building, and and uh, customer for life mentality and so on, and that's slowly going away, and just like how people use social media differently, a lot of people aren't looking to make friends on social media. It's now going the same direction with retail to direct to consumer, because the typical borrower, they're not looking to make best friends with their loan officer or real estate agent. They just see him as a tool. Get this done. I've already done all my research on AI, and just get this done for me. Is that kind of the mentality that we're seeing?
No, I wouldn't agree with that, because I think the average consumer today is paralyzed and overwhelmed. They're
Mm,
paralyzed with indecision and fear. They're overwhelmed with all the information they've received, and they don't know what to do. And now more than ever, they need a Sherpa. They need somebody to give them confidence and explain everything to them, educate them, work through their emotions, and give them really good, trusted advice. So I see it a little bit differently, but the problem is there's a role there and there's a value there, and that's our product, but very few people are serving that product, right? It's one thing to say this is what consumer wants. It's like, you know how direct consumer for a lot of retail companies came up? It's because all of those things you said that loan officers used to have to do, nurture the relationship, follow up, stay in contact, all these things, they never did. They didn't do it. And so
mm.
they're losing all this opportunity because they weren't doing the basics to stay engaged with that customers. And so companies started to get fed up and said, you're not doing it. So we're going to step into the gap. Right. And today it's the same thing, but the gap is different. The gap is now, what do we need to do above what a machine can do to help people, engage in that path of home ownership?
Yeah. I've always just seen direct to consumer as just very transactional and kind of the opposite of relational. So if you're saying that DTC is the future, then what I hear is it's a retail loan officer is going to end up becoming way more just transactional and less relational. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think those are traditional definitions, David. You're thinking of like a boilerplate call center. But
Yeah.
I think today, the relationship is with a lot of times in the way you're saying it, with the company, not the loan officer. And so
Mm.
the company is going to nurture the relationship, but they're going to do it through a DTC, model. Meaning it may not be the same loan officer calling them every time, or the same person, but they're going to do it through technology.
Yeah. You want to move on? Next topic.
Yeah, yeah. Let's go.
First lender usually wins.
First lender usually wins. I love this. So, David,
Great
it's
image.
so funny. I love the image too, by the way, because this really feels like you face plant. But there's all this, you know, there's all this technology and there's all this fear of these top of the funnel global platforms stealing our customers and servicing stealing our customers and call centers, lead purchaser, no, not trigger leads anymore. But all of them, getting to our customer and stealing our customer. But there's one thing that's really incredible. The idea that the first person to the client wins hasn't really changed. Over 50%, it depends by generation, but over 50% of all borrowers only speak to two lenders or less, with the majority of those people only speaking to one. Isn't that really incredible? And then
Mm.
on older generations, when you start to get into people in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 80% of them only talk to a single lender. And so it doesn't everything else is out the window. If you accept that data, then your strategy should be, how do I get to the consumer first? That's your strategy. And by the way, David, this is perfect, dovetail to what we just talked about to direct to consumer. Direct to consumer places win because they get there first. That's why they win. They don't win because they're better. What a retail loan officer needs to do is figure out how to be there first. And sometimes if you're waiting at the bottom of the funnel for your referral partner to refer that person to you, it's already too late. You're second, third, fourth, or fifth. Something like less than 5% of overall borrowers speak to more than four lenders or more. It's
Wow.
non-existent. So you want your strategy. If I was going to coach a loan officer today and say, how do I win? I go, be there first. Just be, if you're there first, be there first. But do have activities to get you to the consumer first, which, like I said, dovetails perfectly back to our direct to consumer topic.
Being there first makes me think about two things, trigger leads and social media, right? Um, and just constantly, we've all got scores, hundreds, or thousands of friends on social media. And, for the people that have at least hundreds, if not thousands, how many opportunities are you missing out on by not being active on social media? And I'll go back to saying that you don't have to be that person that has a creative video every day or whatever, but you have to be active on it. So when I think of getting to the consumer first, I think of trigger leads, which are gone. Um, And then the next thing is social media. There's a ton of different ways. Those are the first two things that came to mind for me. Obviously, nurturing and calling and database and so on. But
Yeah, the thing I would just maybe adjust some of your semantics there. Trigger leads by definition are not first because they're triggered by somebody else already engaging in the borrower. Now,
yeah,
but not that
true.
they weren't effective. But to your point, social media connection is first. And David, you know what's leading, helping a lead get to being first? And I love, Dave Savage being a champion of this, going from speed to lead to speed to need. And that's a very big difference, right? And that is getting to the consumer before they have the need, right? That's how you get there first. And today there's massive predictive analytics that can help us get to that need, right? But another way is just stay engaged with your customers. If you stay engaged with your customers, if you stay engaged in your CRM, if you're engaged on social media, then you have a really good chance at being first to the customer. And the first one wins half of the time. And I mean, we make things so complicated, and it's not complicated. Get to your customer first. You'll win, period. Right? That's all you need to do.
Yeah.
Um, we have we have a couple of charts. This is from ICE's mortgage monitor from April. This first one speaks to what's most important to you when selecting a lender. They're the regular things, but it's almost moot because it doesn't matter. The next chart matters the most. I usually go with the first person I speak to. That is, and this says it by generation, right? The light blue shows what that how many of those customers spoke to only a single loan officer, right? And as I said, the average is I think it's about
Wow.
the average is 40% across all types, right? And if you look at how many do you speak to two or less, right? It's 80% across all generations. And so think of this. If you said, look, I know I'm going to win if I'm first to the customer, what strategy would you devise? Or two, go, I know 80% of my customers are only going to talk to me and one other person. So I have to beat one person. Does my value proposition and my message beat that other person? If you make it that simple, then it's not such a big boulder to roll uphill, right?
What's the psychology here? Because I'm surprised at this. If you would have asked me to guess, I would have thought that chart would have been inverted.
Yeah.
That boomers, the majority of boomers only talk to one. I thought that would have been inverted. So what's the psychology there?
Oh, I don't think so. I think what happens is the younger generations are more familiar with technology. Can easily do digital applications all
Mm,
over the place. They're also
okay.
less rely on relationships than say boomers do. And then boomers are busy. They got they don't like my mom probably would call me to change her clock on her VCR. She's not trying to solve that. I mean, she's going to save her mental energy for something else. I
Mm.
think that's what you see with boomers.
McKenna, what are your thoughts on this? Do
Um,
you have any? It's
no,
okay if you don't have any.
I I also, whenever you said that you were surprised and you thought that it would be inverted, I also disagreed, and my first thought was just familiarity with technology. Like, it'll be super easy for me to look up 5 different lenders. I don't really know how it works, but look up 5 different lenders and be like, I like the look of this one. I like the look of this one. Like, doing a little bit more digging and deciding on one. That's kind of the process that I would see in my head that I would be doing.
McKenna,
Yeah,
I
that
agree with
makes
you. I'm
sense.
I'm surprised that the younger generations don't actually shop more.
I'm honestly surprised as well.
Yeah, I would think that would be inverted in that 50% of them would talk to four or more. I'm
Um,
really surprised at how few people that the young generations talk to. That's the part that surprised me, Dave.
I mean, I did
Yeah,
significantly more research looking into a tattoo artist than looking at 3 or 4 different ones that I liked. And so it's shocking to me that people aren't looking at more than that for lenders.
yeah. Now that I've heard both of your perspectives. It makes sense to me. Um, and it's for Gen Z, it's about 30%. Looks like maybe 27 only talk to one person. Yeah, that makes sense,
But
which is
still, most of them
startling.
only talk to 2.
Right. Yep. And when you
It's
think about,
shocking.
the a home purchase is the largest purchase that most people are ever gonna make in their life, that, almost 80% are only ever compare 2 lenders. That's crazy.
Mhm.
Not to mention how distrustful Gen Z are. It's 80, as Chris Messalari likes to say all the time, 88% of Gen Zers think loan officers will take advantage of them.
Mm.
You know,
McKenna, you had a reaction at that statement?
That doesn't, yeah, sounds right to me.
We got I think that's all the slides we have on this one, right?
yeah, yeah. Let's go.
Yeah. Let's go. Next topic. Lifetime milestones keep
Yep. And let me
moving
just warn you,
here.
McKenna. I expect you to be front and center on this because we're gonna grill you on this topic or get your feedback, depending on who's your dad. But
Wait, what?
let me yeah. Let
No,
me tee
keep
this
going.
up. Let me tee this up before we get into the data, which the data is incredible. But here's my mini rant. We hear this data about how many house units we're short of, whether it's 1 million or 2 million, or the most common is 4 million. Of course, the Trump administration came out with a 10 million, or 10 million houses short, and everybody has these different models to calculate our shortage of housing. But at the core of the model is the speed or velocity of housing formations. And what we don't understand is housing formations are elastic. When somebody launches from their home to go buy their own home or rent their own home, start their own family, it's elastic to all sorts of conditions or their environment. And as we found, our models the last 5 years have proven to be woefully wrong. And David, you and I have talked about this almost every week. And so we're going to look at one of the data points right now that disproves those models about housing formation. And this one's really startling, and it's going to be fun to look at. So, McKenna, let's go right to the chart. And this, I just think this is incredible. So this is about who's having babies, and we'll talk about birth rates in a second and those type of things. But just try this on. More 40-year-olds are having babies than 20-year-olds, which is incredible. More 30 to 34-year-olds are having babies than 20 to 29-year-olds. And the 20 to 24-year-olds are free falling and having babies. And so this is in a backdrop of where our fertility rates are in free fall, which is a huge problem. Last year, I think there was only 3.6 million babies born in the United States. That's 700,000 less than just a dozen years ago, and it's way below the replacement rate that we need births to replace deaths in the United States. And it's a problem all over the world. It's a huge, gigantic problem in Asian countries. It's a huge problem even in China now, because as your population shrinks, you have a double-edged sword, by the way. You're having fewer babies, your population is shrinking, but your aging population is dramatically growing or exponentially growing. And so I have fewer and fewer people to take care of more and more older people, which is a huge problem. But this was more fascinating. And David, I can't wait to get you and McKenna's feedback on this. But what's happening with the 20-year-old and under, you've seen that huge drop in birth rate. It's mostly because of the acceptance of birth control and medical advances that make the whole controlling your reproductive system much easier and more convenient. And the same thing goes with over 40 with medical advances, is making it more not easy, but more and more possible to get pregnant after 40. And so those are, it's like a converging, medical advances are helping drop fertility rates for people under 20 and raising fertility rates for people over 40. And so you're having a lot fewer babies born to teens, which is societally probably a pretty good thing. But you also just see this delay that people think that they can start a family later, and so they're delaying it, especially with that 20 to 24 year old. You know, my mom, I think she was 19 when she had my sister, and she was 21 when she had me. And my dad was only 2 years older than her, and that was common in that time. You had babies right away. As soon as you came out of high school, you started having babies. But today, you have babies like a handful of years after you graduate from college. You know, so David, what's your thoughts? And I can't wait to get McKenna's thoughts.
Excuse me. I just asked McKenna to look up some data from about 100 years ago, 150, 100 years ago, because that is shocking. I was looking at back when Kelly and I had our first kid, Aiden, back in 1999. We were both 21. So just seeing the change from when I first had my children to now is just shocking. What do you think? What do you think is driving that, Ron?
Well, hold on. I can't wait. I can't wait to talk to McKenna about this. McKenna, let's start with you. How old are you?
I'm 24.
Okay, let's see the chart again. So you're 24. I want to see where we're at with this.
Let's see.
So you're in the green line, but you're almost ready to go to the blue line. So you got a gap. Do you feel a little pressure at this point?
So I am now older than both of my parents when they finished having children. Not when they started,
Significantly.
when
Oh yeah.
they finished.
Yeah.
And I remember I was having this same conversation with my grandma a week or two ago, and she asked the same thing in jest about whether or not I was feeling pressure. And
Hmm.
my answer is not at all. I don't feel any pressure whatsoever. I will have kids when I'm ready, and nobody can tell me otherwise. I don't care.
But who would tell you otherwise? I mean, it's your body, your choice. It's just
It's true,
it's
but
your
I mean, I will say I'm very lucky in that none of my family, parents, grandparents, or anything like that are like, so when are we going to get grandchildren? When this, when that? When are you going to start having kids? I've never had that, and I'm very grateful, but I do know that a lot of other women and young men are under that pressure of, so when are you going to give me grandchildren? When are you going to give me nieces and nephews? And I would say that there are some people that are under that pressure and other people that are like, you need to start having kids. No, I don't.
Do you think parents could actually exert enough pressure to make their kids have grandkids? I mean, I like Bud and I joke with Vincent all the time, and he's on going from the blue line to the red line. By the way, he's on the blue highway where you're about to get on, and he's about ready to go to the red highway. But
hmm
we jest with him. But I mean, our joking shouldn't make him want to have a kid. You know?
That's 100% true, but I also think that that's coming from a very healthy perspective where there are other people who are in very unhealthy families where that is a genuine pressure.
Yeah. So right now, you know, you're on a congested freeway and you're in the slow lane, and you're about to get in the HOV lane in the blue.
Yeah. But
Okay, David, what were you?
whatever the reasons are, well, I think probably a lot of people might have perspectives on what the reasons are, but whatever the reasons are, it's making a major impact in the housing industry, right?
Oh, it's 100%. I mean, housing formations are delayed. Not only that, David, but you know, today's household is half a person smaller than the households 20 years ago. So I think the difference
Mm,
is 2.9 versus 2.3 or something like that, off the top of my head. And so we have smaller households. Even when we start to create household formations, they're smaller, which is crazy because they're in bigger houses. Like, explain that to me. You know, we now
right.
have twice the square foot per person that we used to have even 20 years ago. But it's a fascinating topic. It's because it has implications into our world, trying to understand where people are at. But it's more trying to understand the elasticity of housing formation, because I think we become better advisors to our clients about what to expect in the future if we understand that concept.
Yeah. Callie and I, about 6 or 7 years ago, we're both 48 now. No, Callie's 49. I don't know. About 6 or 7 years ago when we were living in California, in our early early 40s, she thought she was pregnant, uh, which we were done having kids at 23. And I got the snip, so it wasn't going to happen. But that there's been some accidents over time with people having vasectomies, and she really thought she was pregnant, and we're both like, well, if it happens, it happens. So we would have fallen into that over 40 category.
Yeah. Yeah, well, now it's common, it's intentional, and, that number is gonna
Yeah.
grow, by the way. Yeah, people are healthier, I mean, all sorts of other stuff, but it's just this is a really interesting thing to pay attention to. Alright, we have more exciting topics, though. I don't know if we
Let's
get more
move on to
exciting.
a rapid fire. We're going to try to hit our 3 to 4 minute mark on these, but the middle class story may be wrong.
I love this topic. So there's a narrative, David, I know you've heard the narrative that the middle class is just collapsing. There's no more middle class in America, and oh my gosh, woe is us, and things are horrible. It's all part of that, the vibe we have, the societal vibe, this negative narrative we get, because the negative sells, and so we all think that the middle class is gone. That we're all worse off than we used to be, and the middle class is gone. And so statistically, that's false, and philosophically, it's exponentially false. And so I think we have some data here, if I remember right. And if not, I'm going to make it up. So this isn't. I'm going to skip this chart because it's harder to understand, and I know we talked about it, but I'm going to skip this chart. Let's go to the next chart. This chart also can be confusing, but I want everybody to stick with me. In the left hand, the column that says poor or near poor, you can see that from 1979 to 2024, the percentage of poor, what people are considered poor, has gone from almost 30% to 18%. And that is a phenomenal success. Similarly, from those people that would be considered lower middle class, just out of being poor, they went from 24% to 15%. A huge improvement, right? And then what we call the middle class, the core middle class, where it has the most people in it, it actually did shrink. So that the poorer class is shrinking is positive. You would think the middle class shrinking is negative because it went from 35% to 30% over those 40 years. But what happened is they migrated to becoming more wealthy. The middle class migrated to upper middle class, as that chart shows, where in 1979, only 10% of the population was considered, upper middle class. But by 2024, it had tripled to 31% of the population would now be considered upper middle class. And so this is really fascinating. Now, here's the rub, David. And here's where, like, based on these economists' model, this is not arguable and should be celebrated. However, it comes to how do you define middle class? If you define middle class as comparative, meaning like how do I compare to somebody else? And if we say, look, middle class is the mean is whoever's at the 50 percentile is in the middle, right? Well, then the actual middle class never changes. It's just like a grading system. If you say 10% of the people get an F, 20% of the people get a D, 30% of the people get a C, 20% of the people get a B, and 10% get an A. Well, that never changes. But that's not reality. And so instead, if you instead put a standard of living, qualifier to it, and if you base standard of living over time, and that's how you define what's middle or upper middle class, that's when the data totally changes. So it all depends on which data you want to follow. Where we can actually call somebody poor today that lives in a 5,000 square foot house, $1 million house, that makes $100,000 a year, we can call them poor because it depends on where they are in the comparative scale, not in the actual standard of living scale. And David, there's one other part about this. A lot of the standard, measurements that we use or models that we use to determine whether you're poor, middle class, lower middle class, those things, they can't take into account like dual income houses or people that are single head of households, or dinks, double income, no children. Like they don't take those into account. They grade all those the same. So like what status you have as a household, whether you're a dank or a single person, are measured all the same. Which the authors of this paper, and we were using a paper from, it's called "The Middle Class is Shrinking Because of Booming Upper Middle Class," which was published in, I believe, a Bloomberg article. And these were two economists. It's a really interesting concept. But, David, at least for my part, I think you join me. One of my missions is to counteract the current negative vibe, because things are much better than we think. And a lot of our jobs as professionals to help people make wise decisions, to give them confidence, right? To be a good advisor is lead them past the freaking headlines and the negative vibe to make decisions that will actually help their families build wealth and security. And so we got to get past this data. And that's why I really like this point. What do you think?
Well, I'm not going to add anything other than adding the fact that my mind just couldn't get around this chart when we're looking at it a couple hours ago. But when we pulled it up this time, I was like, okay, I get it now because it's a unusual chart and how it's laid out. But basically, is it saying that we're having less poor people, but also more rich people? If you take out the
Yep,
middle, the lower class
100%.
is diminishing, but the upper class is increasing. And the core middle class is about, well, I guess the differences between all the levels is about the same. But
If we overlaid some trend analysis to this graph, the clear thing would be is that everybody is shifting to the right. Every
right.
group is shifting to the right, and that's positive.
Because I
And
think
David,
the headline, I think the headline, the stigma around where we're at right now is the rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. But it's kind of the opposite. It's showing that everyone's getting more affluent, you know?
yeah, David, we're going to attack this topic again next week, and we're going to look at it from a hardcore asset perspective. So we're going to compare the assets of today's poor versus poor 20, 40 years ago. And what you're going to see is all categories, and I don't want to steal our stuff from next week, all categories of motion detected at front door. I think
You
it's a
got someone at your front door, Ron.
no. I believe
Hey,
that's going to be an Amazon package. But anyway,
hey,
um,
com completely off topic. Speaking of AI, or maybe this isn't AI, but do you have Ring cameras?
yes.
We talked about this, but I've just noticed it in the last 2 to 3 weeks. McKenna was walking up to the front door, and my Ring notification said there's a person at your front door with a Dunkin' Donuts box in their hand.
Yeah, the
And
Ring has
then yeah,
facial recognition. You can actually take that and go, "That's McKenna." In the future, they'll go, "McKenna's home."
right. I knew that, and I've thought about it, and I don't want to train it with specific people. I don't want to let it know who's who. I'm
Yeah.
sure that there are benefits to it, and I understand the benefits, but I don't know. That's going a little bit too far for me. Makes me think of the movie with Tom Cruise. What was the name of it? Doesn't matter.
Minority Report.
But yeah, Minority Report. Thank you. But yeah, it's given us all kinds of things. Like there's a person at your front door with a Dunkin' Donuts box in their hand, or it specifically said not just a delivery person, but it said there's an Amazon person at your front door with the package.
Yeah. David, I'm gonna finish the last topic, and we can move on. And I don't wanna rob this because we're gonna keep talking about this, but the fact is Americans are wealthier than ever, and actually Americans are making more money than ever, and every data point supports it. But then you go, "Why are people so unhappy?"
Hmm.
Because what you said, even though if I'm poor, but my level of poorness makes me richer than anybody that's ever been poor before, or at least say I'm middle class and I'm have a great life. But what happens, we're comparing ourselves to the uber rich or to the next person
Yeah,
above us. And that's what's really pissing us off. Like, okay, I think I'm doing all right, but I'm not doing like them. Right. And so there's this huge unrest, and we'll talk about this in future weeks. But it's a really interesting topic. So, any final
that's
thoughts on
great.
this? McKenna, do you have any thoughts on this?
I think
No
we move
thoughts from
on.
me.
All right.
All right, AI first.
And by
Already
the way,
here.
McKenna, I don't believe you were walking up the door with Dunkin' Donuts. I don't think you eat
What?
donuts. I don't know.
I absolutely eat donuts.
Ah, I know you like McDonald's, so I guess donuts is in alignment.
McKenna gets her body type from my side of the family, not Kelly's side of the family, and, up until my early 40s, you wouldn't know. You would look at me, a fairly thin, slender guy, and think he's pretty healthy, but not necessarily. I love McDonald's, love junk food, love soda, but McKenna's similar. She can eat whatever she wants, and well, to a certain extent, and pretty much look like she is now. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, but hold on. In her defense, she works out all the time, And let me just say, I don't know if you're scoring points with Kelly today. You've called out her age. You also mentioned her getting pregnant at 40, and now you're saying that she's not thin like you. Like, you go- like you know, McKenna, when we get off, you might want to help coach your dad because I'm sure Kelly.
I
Media
disagree.
trading. Media
Media
trading by
train.
McKenna.
She
Yeah,
doesn't watch these podcasts.
yeah. Well, then you're safe. McKenna, don't tell.
Yeah. All right. What are we talking about here?
AI first is already here. Okay, this is interesting because Dave, we've had this topic a couple different times, and it's really about companies rushing to AI and what that means. And so this is just another company, and it's Zillow. Zillow is creating that they now have a ChatGPT plugin, and they have their own GPT, and they now can control, a potential home buyer's journey from first click to closing, and it's really sophisticated and interesting. But the thing that the reason why the topic resonated with me because we know these big platforms are doing this, but it's what's the it's the two things that I wonder is do we understand the consumer behavior today or the consumer demand today, and then no matter where you are, what platform or how you deliver your experience, your customer, your journey, what are you doing to meet their demand? And so customers want more personalization, they want more speed, more context, more relevance, and they want faster action with more information, right? And they want to do it via a conversation in one place. Like they don't want to go 100 places. They don't want to click all over the place. They want to have one conversation. And so that's what Zillow's created, this platform where they can have that entire conversation and be routed. Or for example, the customer says, hey, I'm looking for a house that has a granny flat, it's on 2 acres, it's in this location, whatever. Well, Zillow will immediately take them to the listing. Zillow will immediately get them his estimate. Zillow will immediately hook them up to the real estate agent, or Zillow will immediately get them, schedule a showing. It will also go through all the financing. It will walk them all through in one space, right? And so, if we think that's what the customer wants, and I do think that, now, of course, they want all the value on top of that. But if you're a loan officer, how do you meet them there? And so the question is, what technology are you leveraging to help meet your customer where they want and giving them what they want? What AI are you embracing? What tools? And I don't care who you are. You could be on the worst platform, in the country, and there's still plenty of tools on your platform, and I'm guessing you're not really using all those tools. Most loan officers don't. Adoption rates on tools across the spectrum, Dave, we talk about this all the time, is less 25%. And the question is, I don't care if you're a broker, an independent loan officer, a mom and pop shop. Are you leveraging the technology you want to be successful? And David, I'll turn it over to you 1 second. In my LinkedIn post earlier this week on this topic, I really highlighted Mortgage Coach's Next Gen. Are you using tools, inexpensive tools like Mortgage Coach Next Gen, to start to deliver an AI experience that your customer demands, where you kind of give them a one global place to get all their answers and be having a conversation 24/7, 365? And that's where this topic came from. What do you think, David?
I've got a short question and then a follow-up to it, a follow-up thought, depending on your answer. How many mortgage companies or real estate companies that you know of are building their own proprietary AI?
Yeah, you know what, David? It's really interesting. It's not a lot, but the ones that are have a lot of market share.
So my thoughts on that, I wonder, because my thought was you were going to answer that with a lot. And I wonder if there's going to be, if there are all these mortgage and real estate companies that are building their own GBT within their own system, I wonder how much of that is being done in vain. Because when you go to a right now, you go to any mortgage website and you go to their mortgage calculator or their funnel system. I'm looking to buy a house. How old are you? Are you a vet? Are you this, that, or the other? And then eventually, before it gets to the point, it says, give us your phone number, give us your email, give us this, that, and the other. I wonder how many people are built, how many companies are building that in vain, because how many consumers are going to default to using a non-biased AI system, a Chat GPT, a Claude, or Gemini, or whoever, versus using a mortgage company or real estate company's GBT AI system in fear that it's going to be biased.
Yeah, interesting question. Going to the first part of that, David, when you ask how many companies are building a proprietary kind of global kind of solution, let's call it 8 to 10. But how many vendors are filling that gap?
Yeah.
100%. Right? Just like we're talking about with Mortgage Coach, or we could be talking about with Encompass, or even Total Expert. Like, everybody's filling the void. Are you implementing those tools? Are you mastering those tools? And let's say, David, let's say I'm from the Stone Age. Like, I'm at Ron Stour's brokerage, and I'm a lone dude working out of the trunk of my car. I don't have any tools. I don't invest in anything, but I could still create a home ownership path by creating prompts for my clients to use in ChatGPT, and then advising them about what ChatGPT is telling them. Like, let's say I didn't have the technology, I could rent it by creating a journey using another AI tool, just with my own, type of, organic prompts. So you can fulfill it anyway. The question really here is, are you paying attention to what your customer wants? And if so, are you delivering it? And if not, how do you like being a school teacher? Because that's where you should really head.
We're way over on this topic. Let's move on.
We just got to
What do you say?
danger. We're like, whenever I get to
We
the school
what?
teacher part, like, whenever I say, well, if you're not doing this, you need to become a teacher, it's almost always time to change the topic.
Well, let's change topic. I don't even remember what this topic is about. Facilitate connection.
Oh yeah, this is such a good topic too. Thank you, David. This and by the way, I know we're running late, so let's skip our tech topic of the day if you guys are good
All
with
right.
that.
Yeah.
We might. Do we have more? How many more topics do we have? Producer McKenna,
This
can we get an update?
This is the last one.
Oh, because I see 2 more dots on our little thing, so our bar in the bottom. We might have had too
we were
much pregame.
hoping we were hoping people didn't pay attention to the dots.
Okay, so this is
Oh no,
this is
this is right.
awesome.
She just needs to move it to number 6. We're on number 6 right now, and then there was the AI tip of the week.
Once again, it's probably a little bit too much pregame show today. But let's go to this. And so I think we have a couple charts here, right? I hope, or else I'll just.
We got one.
Oh, that's not good. All right. I thought we did have a couple charts, but maybe we don't, and we don't need them. So here's the thing. This is some really interesting data, and I don't know why I didn't put charts in there. It's on me, guys. I'm sorry. This comes from Rocket Mortgage. Rocket Mortgage did a survey. Oh, you do? See, she does. What are you talking about?
Look at
Rocket
that.
Mortgage did a survey of 2,000 clients, and here's what they found. First of all, people buy in neighborhoods because they want a connection with their neighbors, which is totally makes sense, right? And 80% says, having a relationship with your neighbors improves the neighborhood and your quality of life. 80% say, but only 30% say they know their neighbor. Like, only 30% say, like, 80% crave to have a relationship, right? But only 30% say they even know their neighbor, right? Here's the amazing, and then we'll look at, I know this slide. Here's the amazing thing. Only 17% of people actively try to meet their neighbors. So think of this, 80% want a connection, but only 17% try. Isn't that amazing, that statistic? And I believe the statistic. And then, by the way, 54% hope it happens. Right? 80% want it, only 17% try, but 54% want it to happen. You know what that just says, David? It says how socially inept we're getting. Like, I crave connection, but I have no idea how to do it. So please do it for me. That's what the message is. And David, you are exceptionally social. I'm sure you know all your neighbors. I only know the neighbors when the police show up because I want to see what's going on. But you know what I mean? You're really good at it, but most people aren't. And here's the takeaway: people crave connection. They want connections in their neighborhood with their neighbors. They don't know how to do it, but they would be super happy if somebody could help them. Well, if I'm a real estate agent or even a loan officer, you know what? Maybe I should specialize in helping my clients connect in their new neighborhoods. And if I were to help my clients connect in their neighborhoods, right? How much would their neighbors appreciate me? How much value would I then be bringing to that community? And how many future clients would I win by simply doing that? That's my message.
McKenna, how would you describe your mother and myself as far as being neighborly?
Uh, I would say, I mean, I laughed to myself, Ron, whenever you said that my dad was very outgoing because how the jokes that we make is, my mom could befriend a tree. But I think that that you are very much more similar to me and Aiden in that we're fine. We're good out here. We don't really need to engage that much, but your relationship with your neighbors, I mean, it's one of your next door neighbors and you kind of know the people behind you.
Whoa,
That's
how many people in the neighborhood though? I'm not necessarily talking about the people next door.
that's true.
But we've got a good amount of friends in this neighborhood.
Yeah,
Now,
sure.
are they best friends? No, but
Sure.
okay.
No,
Not
I
sure what.
now thinking about okay, fair enough. A few. My bad. Two more than I mentioned.
No, I've got probably a half a dozen neighbors with their cell phones in my number where I can call, where I sometimes text. I'm not saying I'm best friends with them, but this turned into like an argument. I'm trying to be like, yes, I'm very social.
It's turned
um,
into us judging you, David.
what?
It's become a judgment.
You know what? To
How
be
would you
She's
fair,
totally judging me.
giving you your props, uh, some old neighbors that we had, their kids who are now their oldest daughter, who's one of my best friends, call you and my mom aunt and uncle. So, to your credit, there is at least one of those.
Sounds like you did the work on that.
Oh, I was, yeah,
But
yeah.
if you look at the
Go
chart here,
ahead.
I'm sorry. If you look at the chart of how neighbors showed up last year, I mean, small favors like, "Hey, I'm out of milk. Do you have a cup I could borrow?" Or like we have the best neighbors. One and I are two places. We have the best neighbors, and our next door neighbor really takes care of us because she calls us when there's anything wrong with our house. She's like, "Do you know you've had a great geyser going out of your front yard for the last 3 weeks?" Well, no, thank you for letting us know. um,
Yeah.
but they're great. So that's the type of favors or looking out for you. But that's just per functionary, like help me with blocking and tackling. But people actually want true connection, like that. If we went back to that slide, like whatever it was, 45% actually want emotional support. I don't personally understand that because that's what your mailman's for. But that's what you want with like your hello, is this on? That was funny. That's what your mailman's for. Anyway, I want to get back to my point that there's so much opportunity here to distinguish yourself if you're a loan officer or a real estate agent by trying to help create, these, connections. And that's what we're good at. That we want to be in this business if we weren't. And so maybe build that into your business plan and you'd be surprised at how much business you can possibly get and how you can be a positive force in people's lives,
Yeah. One final thought on me for this one is not going to help any loan officer or real estate agent, but I think about neighborhoods with HOAs versus without HOAs, and how much, if you're living in a neighborhood with an HOA, you're much more likely to uh, build relationships, have relationships. And I'm not going to ask McKenna to comment on it. Maybe think about it for a week and comment on HOAs. McKenna hates
Oh,
HOAs. I like them.
I can comment on
No,
HOAs all day if you want
no,
me to.
no. We're already over time, so no comments on HOAs. But I bet you there's a big distinction with that, with neighborhoods that have them versus not.
Well, David, in my house in California, which has, I think 2 or 3 HOAs, uh, you know, half the neighbors are suing the other half. It's really interesting over
Oh
multiple
wow.
problems. And so you end up having a relationship with all of them, and it doesn't necessarily mean a good relationship, you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Well, that's it. If you've joined us live or if you're watching this later, we appreciate it. We go live typically on Thursdays, but Ron is all over the world every other week. Never know what country he's going to be in. So we typically go live on Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. And I think we're going to be on schedule for next week on Thursday at 3 p.m. And gosh, McKenna, we should start recording our pre-show, our pre-show, because that's maybe just as, if not way more entertaining than actually when we're live. So yeah,
If you want the more adult version.
adult version. Well, cheers to you, sir. Happy Friday. Have a
Cheers.
great weekend.
Have a good weekend, everybody. Thanks for checking us out.
We'll see you next week.